All right, friends, welcome back to our online Bible study in Deuteronomy, and happy Halloween. Today, we are talking about something that is just fundamental to what it means to be a person of faith, to be a person of God. What is addressed in Deuteronomy 26, which is what we're looking at today, is something that has followed the people of God all throughout the centuries and is something that we still believe is fundamental to what it means to be a follower of God. And it is all about generosity. How is it that God is calling us to be a generous people? Before we get into that, I'm so grateful that you're a part of this and thankful that you have been a part of this all through the first 25 chapters, and just a little bit of encouragement to stick with it. I hope that you've had days when just what we've talked about has hit you right between the eyes. And I hope that you've also had days where, even though that wasn't the case, that you've just stuck with it, because we believe that there is power in just the rhythm and the habit of reading and studying the Scripture together. So, giving. This is another one of those rhythms that God gives to the people to help them to always remember where they came from and His good grace in their lives. Because again, like us today, they were prone to forget. So I'm going to show you what He said to them, and then reflect very briefly on what that means for us, because I think that it'll be pretty obvious. So they are told to give a portion of the first fruits of their produce. First fruits is important because you're not just giving your leftovers, you're not just giving what you don't want, you're not just giving what you don't need. You are giving a portion of the first yield that you get from your crop. So for us today, obviously, that the goal is to be people who are generous, and we give first. That giving is that kind of priority. So here's the pattern that they are given for how to give. They're told not just to give some of their first fruits, but they're told to do this. Look there in verse 3, that you go to the priest, and this is what you say to the priest. I declare today to the Lord your God that I have come into the land of the Lord, sworn to our father that he'd give us. So this is a recognition that their yield comes from the land. And who does the land belong to? The land belongs to the Father. It has just been entrusted to them. So everything that they have is actually the Father's anyway. It's just that reminder. Every time you give, I start by saying, look, the only reason that I am even able to work hard in the field to produce this is because God has created this land and entrusted it to me. So recognition, remembrance from the very beginning. This all belongs to Him. And then going down into chapter 5 or verse 5, it says, and then you say this, and these are things that they have to say as they give. A wandering Aramean was my father, a reference back to Abraham. And then read those next few verses. It's the story of Israel. The story of Israel told in a very succinct version. So it is, as I give, I remember, one, that it all belongs to God anyway, but two, I remember what God has done. I remember what God has done in my life. I remember what God has done for my family. So the first thing that they do as they give is they remember. And then after that they give, here in verse 10, and behold, now I bring the first of the fruit of the ground, which you, O Lord, have given to me. So after I remember, I'm returning. So I remember that it all belongs to God, and I remember everything that God's done. And now I return just a portion. Just a portion of what God has entrusted to me. I return to Him, to do the good work that we're talking about just in a second. I return it. So I remember, and then I return. And then the last thing, verse 11, and you shall rejoice in all the good that the Lord your God has done to you and to your house. So I remember, I then return a portion of it, and then I rejoice. I rejoice about the good things that God is doing. The first part of that verse, which I already read, is pretty easy. I rejoice for the things that God has done for me and for my house, which means for my family, but then also for the Levite, the sojourner who's among you. The Levite, religious officials, sojourners, travelers that are among you. So I'm rejoicing not just about what God has done for my family, but also for those that don't have means to provide for themselves at the time. For the religious leader whose job is just focused on that, and for the sojourner, the person who's traveling. Then you get down into verse 12, and When you have finished paying all the tithe of your produce in the third year, that's the tithe just means 10%, which is the year of tithing, giving it to the Levite, the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow. Then it says a little bit more. But then it expands that it's not just for the Levite, the religious official, it's not just for the sojourner, the traveler, but also for the fatherless, for the orphan, and for the widow. And what's clear here is that we are called to rejoice that God has provided for us and our family, and God has also provided for the traveler, the person who doesn't have a home. God has provided for the religious official, that God has provided for the orphan, that God has provided for the widow. And how does God provide for those folks? God provides for those people through the tithe. He provides for those people through the giving of the first fruits. So we remember what God has done, we return a portion of it, and we rejoice that through this, God is providing not just for us, but God is providing for others also. From the very beginning, it has been central to the people of God to be people who are generous. And that's true for us today. So I just for me, will be reflecting on this rhythm that was given to the people of Israel and what it means for me today. I think it means the same thing, that I am meant to remember that it's all God's and how good He is to me. I am meant to return a portion of that, and I am meant to rejoice for the ways that God is providing for me and my family, and then also providing for others through the giving that of the tithe, the giving of a portion of what has been entrusted to us to care for those folks also. So how are you being stirred to live in a generous way? I would encourage you to remember those three things and to get in that pattern also. Keep with your reading. I'll see you next time.